none other than Tony Jones of The Athletic, helps cover the Utah Jazz. And Tony, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. How are you?
My guy, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Well, Jason, I know this is your guy. I appreciate you helping us getting this on. And Tony, I just first wanted to kind of discuss, I don't know, I guess the big fish, or I've been calling him the big fin that everybody has been trying to figure out is if he's coming or not to Golden State, and that is Lauri Markkanen. I know that you mentioned earlier in the week that there had been substantial offers on the table, but I just kind of wanted to start there and ask if there's been any progress and sort of what you've been hearing along the Markkanen trade lines.
Well, I mean, I would say this, from Utah's standpoint, their stance on trading Lauri or not trading Lauri has been the same, for almost a year. Their standpoint is we don't want to trade Lauri. So if you are going to trade for Lauri, there has to be a high threshold that has to be met. And, the offer is going to have to blow us away. And, what that offer is, what that offer isn't, the only people that can answer that for the Utah Jazz are the Utah Jazz themselves. And, it makes it a scenario where, you could get a trade, in the next 24 to 48 hours, or you can get a trade in the next year, or you cannot get a trade at all. And, it's different than Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. I think the Jazz, had motivation for different reasons with both of those guys to trade. Both of those guys, there's no motivation to trade Lauri Markkanen. He's a star level player who is happy in Utah, and who the Jazz still can grow with the young guys on their roster. So if they are going to trade Lauri, it's got to be a threshold that has to be met, and only they can answer that question.
Well, I was going to ask Tony, from understanding, more certainly than us about the Utah Jazz, what do you feel like is an offer that might blow them away if that's indeed what they are looking for? What do you think it would take from Golden State?
I'm not sure what it would take, because I do know, like the reports that said out there, that Golden State has, an offer on the table, and and I feel it's a substantial offer. But the Jazz can only answer that for themselves, what they're looking for, and I think it's kind of remiss that a lot of people have been trying to speak for the Jazz in terms of what they want, in terms of what they would accept as an offer that they would deem acceptable. But I do think that it's really interesting that teams have really ramped up their interest and ramped up their level of aggression over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and frankly, I think that that's where a lot of the talk and the chatter and the noise has come from. I think that there's one set of thoughts from teams and from people that are chasing Lauri, and there's another set of thoughts from the Utah Jazz themselves in terms of whether they want to trade Lauri or not. So, it'll be interesting to see what actually transpires. But I do think that the level of offers that are out there are substantial. I think that they're heavily pick based, and and I think that with a couple of the offers, there's a young player or two out there that has the potential to grow over the course of his career.
Tone's being diplomatic. Tony, tell these folks in the Bay Area to get on with their holiday weekend. Lauri Markkanen ain't coming here. I don't think Mike Dunleavy has the stomach to go back and forth with Danny Ainge. He's made a career out of taking advantage of people, really.
Well, I'll say this about Danny Ainge: you're not going to cheap out on Danny Ainge. That's just one thing that is never going to happen. So it is kind of funny reading some of the potential offers on Twitter and or X. What are we calling it? Are we calling it Twitter, or are we calling it X?
Are we calling it Twitter still?
Yeah.
We're calling it Twitter, because I'm never calling it X. But I think it is kind of funny, and some of the offers, well, will Danny Ainge take, Austin Reeves and 2 first-round picks? I will say this. I think one thing that complicates Golden State's package is that they only have 2.5, essentially 2.5 first-round picks that are tradable. You have 26 unprotected. You have 28 unprotected. But the third first-round pick is protected from 1 through 20, which essentially means it's not a first-round pick, because if it conveys in the 20s, and it's not really a first-round pick if it conveys in the 20s. So, I think that's one thing that would complicate the package, and you do have to work around that if you're the Golden State Warriors. And I think that the other thing that complicates the package is you look at what Mikal Bridges went for a couple of weeks ago. He went for 5 firsts, and it wasn't just 5 firsts. It was 5 firsts plus swaps plus Bojan Bogdanovic, which I firmly think that Brooklyn's going to throw him in circulation. He's going to average 17 to 20 points a game, and then they're going to flip him for another first at the February trade deadline. So I think that at the end of the day, that package is going to be 6 firsts for Mikal Bridges. So, I think that all of that stuff has to be taken into consideration when you think about, what Lauri Markkanen could not potentially go for.
Now, Tone, you've been covering the Jazz for a while. You're very tapped in. You know what type of players that they're attracted to. You know how they develop their players. You know the type of style of basketball they play. Do you think Jonathan Kuminga is a type of talent and player that a team like Utah and Danny Ainge would value? And, of course, that's not to say they don't think he's a good player, but you know what type of players and the schemes they play. Is someone of Jonathan Kuminga's skill set someone that you think Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz organization would value?
I think that if you're a Golden State Warriors fan and you really, really, really like Jonathan Kuminga, I think that you're safe here.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way. I think that Kuminga is a dynamic and electric talent. I think that he's somebody who has gotten a lot better over the last year to a year and a half. I think he's somebody who's figured out that it's very hard for the rest of the NBA to stay in front of him off the dribble. And I think because of that, I think that he's also somebody who's going to command $200 million very, very soon. And I don't know if the Utah Jazz are in a position to want to take somebody back who they're going to have to pay $200 million to. So if you're – go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I think you're spot on, because the news earlier today about Franz Wagner getting the rookie max might drive someone like Kuminga's price up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that, let's say, the Jazz trade with the Warriors, and, let's say that kind of trade goes through, and let's say Jonathan Kuminga's in the trade. Let's just be hypothetical here. Jonathan Kuminga is going to, score 20 to 25 points a game on a team that's going to win 17 to 22 games on the season. So that means you're going to be, if you're the Jazz, you're going to probably be nowhere close. And you're going to have to pay somebody, basically a rookie max, a second contract max very soon. So if you're the Jazz, and you make the decision to trade Lauri Markkanen, I mean, you're making the decision to clear the deck. So if you're making that decision, then I don't think that you want to have to pay somebody that kind of money just 1 year later. So I think that if you're Golden State, hypothetically speaking, I think that you're safe with Kuminga.
Longtime NBA reporter and writer Tony Jones joining us here on 95.7 The Game, covers the Jazz for The Athletic. Tony, I'm curious, since Lauri Markkanen may or may not be available to someone like Golden State, but also just taking a look at the NBA, we've seen Bridges be moved. Paul George ended up signing with Philadelphia. There's not a ton of, quote, big fish out there, but if you are a team, not necessarily Golden State, but if you're a team out there that's trying to acquire a player, most likely via trade, like, who do you think is the most, I guess, attainable big name left on the market?
You know, like I said, with Lauri, I mean, I think it could go one of three ways. I mean, you know, maybe Utah wakes up, you know, tomorrow and says, hey, you know, we have a package that we would accept and we would trade Lauri, and that would make Lauri the biggest fish. But, you know, I think the one that, you know, you have to look at, I think you obviously have to look at Brandon Ingram down in New Orleans, because I think that, you know, there's some motivation there from New Orleans. So everybody needs to stay out of the second apron, the entire NBA. You know, I don't know how much people realize, you know, that how destructive and how constrictive a team being in the second apron is. It's actually amazing that the Warriors have been able to get as much done flirting with that threshold that they have this offseason. So, you know, if you're New Orleans, I think that there's some motivation there with Brandon Ingram. You know, I think that obviously DeMar DeRozan's out there, and, you know, Adrian Wojnarowski just reported that, you know, going back to Chicago isn't an option anymore. So, you know, I think that those are the two guys that you look at. And then, you know, I think that there's always somebody that we don't know and that we can't really see. And then one day, boom, you know, it's done and there's a trade, and we're all like, oh my God, we didn't realize this guy was on the market to begin with. So, you know, I think that there's a lot of off season left. I think that, you know, because of the new CBA, I think that slowed free agency down considerably. You know, so I think that you're going to see a lot of stuff, you know, play out over the next 2 months. And I think that you're going to see stuff play out, you know, later in the off season than it typically does.
This is Tony Jones of The Athletic, NBA reporter. He covers the Utah Jazz. He covers the Denver Nuggets, and he's as tapped in as any NBA reporter across the country. One more question for you, Tone, before I let you get out of here. You mentioned him just now in your last answer to Evan. It seems like DeMar DeRozan is likely on his way to Sacramento. Just personal opinion, how do you like that fit with him next to the Fox and on that roster? How do you see that fitting and coming together?
Well, if he's replacing Harrison Barnes, then Sacramento's won, no matter what the fit is. Because, you know, they just need a better player in that position than Harrison Barnes is. And, you know, I know that, you know, we're living in a world where you shoot 3-pointers, you know, but we're also in a world where, you know, in the playoffs, guys that can go and get it from 16, 17, and 18 feet are very, very valuable. And it's the same thing with Jonathan Kuminga. We're living in a world where guys that can that can generate rim pressure are extremely valuable, whether they can shoot threes or not. So, you know, if Sacramento were to figure out a way to get DeMar DeRozan, I mean, the fit isn't the cleanest because, you know, he obviously doesn't play above the 3-point line, and he obviously needs the ball in his hands. But when you get to a playoff scenario and you got to go and put the ball in somebody's hands and, you know, tell that guy to go and get a bucket, DeMar DeRozan is still one of the best we have in this league. So, you know, from that standpoint, you know, Sacramento will have won if, you know, he's at that forward spot instead of Harrison Barnes.
That's Tony Jones. Tone, thank you so much. Did you get those 5 miles in yesterday?
Bro, I did not.
Tone is my guy.
It did not happen.
I got to say this. I am so mad. I popped my Achilles before I got to get out on the court with Tone because he is a hooper. He hooped in college.
You still run 5s?
Does he?
Oh, yeah. I still run 5. Yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Tone's a hooper,
you, man.
One of my guys, one of my closest friends in his business. We really, really appreciate your time, Tony. Keep doing what you do, man. And I'll see you soon enough. Next time I see you, I'll probably be out of this boot.
Thank you, Tony.
Man,